When Hope Valdez stepped off that train expecting marriage, she never imagined she'd find a man drowning in whiskey and guilt, a former Army doctor who'd lost everything to his own demons. Dr. Nathaniel Whitmore owned the biggest ranch in Montana but couldn't save his own wife and child when their house caught fire. Now his vengeful brother wants to destroy what's left of his life. But Hope carries her own devastating secret from the Indian raids that took everything she loved. Can two broken souls heal each other before Vincent Whitmore's deadly revenge tears them apart forever? This is a story about redemption, second chances, and the healing power of love. If you believe broken people can find wholeness together, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive into this emotional journey. Rejected bride saves alcoholic doctor's ranch when his brother seeks deadly revenge. The September wind carried dust and broken dreams across Copper Ridge Station. Hope Valdez pressed her leather medical bag against her chest, feeling the weight of instruments she'd sworn never to use again. 2 years since the raid. 2 years since she'd watched her husband Miguel and son Diego bleed out in their burning home while Apache warriors disappeared into the desert night. The train's whistle echoed off canyon walls like a mourning cry. Through the settling steam, she spotted him. Harold Brennan stood near the station house exactly as he'd described himself in his careful letters. Average height, thinning brown hair, merchant's soft hands clutching wilted flowers. But his face when he saw her. Sweet Virgin Mary, his face. Miss Valdez. His voice cracked like thin ice. Senor Brennan. Hope kept her chin high, though her stomach churned. Thank you for meeting me. There's been a misunderstanding. He pulled out a handkerchief, dabbed sweat despite the cool air. Your letters mentioned you were a nurse, but they didn't specify. That is, I didn't realize you were Mexican, Hope supplied quietly. Half Mexican, half Spanish. Does this matter? His silence was answer enough. The platform buzzed with afternoon travelers. Cowboys heading home after months on the trail. Families moving west chasing dreams. Everyone with somewhere to go except Hope, standing with her small trunk and smaller hopes, while a man who'd promised marriage looked at her like she'd crawled from under a rock. I'm sorry, Harold said finally. My business partners, my reputation. People wouldn't understand. Understand what? A man keeping his word. Color flooded his pale cheeks. I'll pay for your return ticket, of course. Compensation for the trouble. He pressed coins into her palm, silver pieces warm from his sweaty grip. The weight felt heavier than her entire future. Keep your money. Hope let the coins fall ringing against wooden planks. I wouldn't want to burden your conscience further. Whispers rose around them. A crowd had gathered, drawn by drama. She caught fragments. Mail order bride. Refused her. Poor girl. Shameful. Hope straightened her spine. She'd survived her husband's death, her son's murder, 3 years treating bullet wounds and birthing babies in Santa Fe. She wouldn't crumble because one coward couldn't see past skin color. Miss Valdez, the voice came from behind her, deep, steady, carrying authority. Hope turned to find herself looking up at broad shoulders and winter gray eyes. He stood well over 6 feet, built like he'd been carved from mountain stone. His hat shadowed angular features, but she caught the firm set of his jaw, the tremor in his hands. Dr. Nathaniel Whitmore, he said, touching his hat brim. Ironwood Ranch. Even in Santa Fe, she'd heard that name. Owned 20,000 acres, they said. Ran cattle and horses across half the territory. The kind of man who could buy Harold's entire store with pocket change. But there was something wrong with his eyes. Pain carefully controlled but unmistakable. And that tremor in his hands. Doctor, Hope studied his face with professional interest. Are you well, senor? Well enough. His gaze flicked to Harold, who shrank visibly. Seems you're in need of alternative arrangements. See, but I'm looking for someone with medical training. Someone who can help when accidents happen, when babies come early, when people need healing. His voice grew rough. The pay is fair, room and board included. Position lasts through winter with option to extend. Hope felt the crowd watching, felt Harold's relief at being rescued from an awkward situation. But she also felt something else in Dr. Whitmore's gray eyes. Desperation, maybe, or loneliness so deep it had bones. What happened to your previous nurse? Never had one. People around here make do with what healing they can get from traveling doctors or folk remedies. He paused and she caught the slight slur in his words. Time they had better. The whispers had changed tone, approval now mixed with surprise. Dr. Nathaniel Whitmore was known as a brilliant man, eccentric, but not given to charity. This unexpected kindness was apparently news worth spreading. And the nature of the work, medical care for ranch hands and neighboring families. Help with difficult births, injuries, illnesses. Basic surgery when needed. His hands trembled slightly as he spoke. I have a complete medical facility. Everything you'd need. Hope looked at her trunk, at Harold's pale face, at the coins scattered on the platform like broken promises. Then back to Dr. Whitmore, solid as the mountains behind him but carrying shadows she recognized. I accept your offer, doctor. Good. He moved to collect her trunk, lifting it easily. Wagons this way. Harold stepped forward, hand outstretched. Miss Valdez, I hope you understand I meant no personal. I understand perfectly. Hope pulled on her gloves with deliberate care. You're a coward who breaks promises when they become inconvenient. I hope your reputation survives the shame. She walked away without looking back, following Dr. Whitmore toward a sturdy wagon hitched to two bay horses. The crowd parted respectfully. Whatever else they thought of this strange turn of events, no one questioned the doctor's judgment twice. He helped her onto the wagon seat, his hands steady despite the tremor. When he climbed up beside her, she caught the scent of whiskey beneath leather and soap. Not fresh drinking, but the smell that soaks into a man's skin after years of dependence. Thank you, Hope said as they rolled away from the station, though I must ask why. Why what? Why help me? You don't know anything about me, Doctor. Whitmore guided the horses through town past frame houses and businesses heading toward open country. Know enough takes courage to stand straight when the world tilts. Takes more to do it with dignity. They rode in comfortable silence past grassland dotted with cattle, following a creek lined with cottonwoods. Mountains rose in the distance, peaks touched with early snow. But Hope's attention kept returning to the man beside her. The careful way he held the reins. The slight tremor that never quite stopped. The shadow of old pain in his eyes. It's beautiful, she said, meaning the landscape. Has its moments. Winters are hard, though, long and cold. Some folks find the isolation difficult. I'm not afraid of solitude. Sometimes it's preferable to poor company. That earned her a quick glance, something that might have been approval. What brought you west, besides Brennan's letters? Hope considered how much truth to share. My husband was killed 2 years ago. Apache raid near Santa Fe. My son, her voice caught despite her efforts. My son Diego was only 5. After they died, I needed work. Nursing seemed logical, but treating gunshot wounds and knife fights gets wearing. When Harold's letters came, marriage seemed like a chance for something different. Different how? A family. A home where I belonged instead of just worked. She adjusted her black skirts, smoothing wrinkles from travel. Foolish maybe. Nothing foolish about wanting peace. Something in his tone made her look at him sideways. Pain carefully controlled, but unmistakable. This was a man who understood loss intimately. The ranch is another hour, he said, changing the subject. You'll have your own room in the main house. Meals with me and my foreman, Santos, unless you prefer to take them separately. The medical facility is well equipped. I'll show you everything tomorrow. How many people will I be treating? 20 ranch hands year-round plus their families. Neighboring homesteaders when they need help. Difficult births, injuries, illnesses. Sometimes, he paused, hands tightening on the reins. Sometimes people who drink too much and need sobering up. Hope studied his profile, noting the slight flush in his cheeks, the way he avoided her eyes. Are you speaking from professional observation, doctor, or personal experience? The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Finally, he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Both. They crested a hill and Ironwood Ranch spread below them. Hope's breath caught. The main house was larger than she'd expected, 2 stories of solid timber and stone with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Outbuildings dotted the landscape, barn, bunkhouse, smithy, storage sheds. Everything spoke of prosperity earned through intelligence and hard work. But there was something wrong with the picture. Gardens overgrown with weeds. broken fence rails left unrepaired, an air of neglect that spoke of a man no longer caring about details. "How long have you lived here?" she asked. "Built it 12 years ago, started with nothing but a medical degree and determination. And now I run 5,000 head of cattle breed, some of the finest horses in Montana, and employ good men year-round." His voice carried old pride, but it was tired pride. Not bad for a man who started with empty pockets. They rolled through the ranch gate under an arch bearing the Ironwood brand. Dogs ran out barking, tails wagging. Cowboys emerged from various buildings to see who'd arrived, their faces curious but respectful. Dr. Whitmore pulled up at the main house. "Santos," he called. A weathered man with kind eyes and graying temples emerged from the barn. Hope guessed him to be around 50, with the easy competence of someone who'd spent his life managing both animals and men. "Santos Rodriguez," Dr. Whitmore said as the man approached. "My foreman and the closest thing to family I've got. Santos, this is Miss Hope Valdez. She'll be providing medical care for the ranch and helping run the household." Santos's face lit up when he heard her name. "Bienvenida, Señorita Hope," he said warmly. "It will be good to have someone who understands healing. We have needed this for a long time." "Gracias," Hope replied, touched by genuine welcome. "I look forward to working with you." "Santos will show you around," De Whitmore said, lifting her trunk with hands that shook slightly. "I'll take this up to your room." The house's interior was well built, but clearly lacking a woman's touch. Good furniture, but arranged for function over beauty. Clean but sterile. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, the parlor comfortable but impersonal. "Señor Nathaniel, he is good man," Santos said quietly as they toured the ground floor. "But very sad since the fire. Very alone." "Fire." Santos's face clouded. 2 years ago, his wife Carmen and little boy Roberto. The house caught fire in the night. Señor Nathaniel, he tried to save them, but he shrugged helplessly. "Sometimes God calls people home, and we cannot stop it." Understanding crashed over Hope like a cold wave. The tremor in his hands, the careful distance in his manner, the walls he'd built around his heart, and the whiskey smell that clung to him like grief. "I see," she said softly. "How old was the boy?" "Roberto was 4 years old, bright child always asking questions about medicine." Santos's voice roughened with memory. "After they died, Señor Nathaniel, he blamed himself, started drinking heavy. We thought he might not survive the grief." They climbed the stairs to the second floor. Hope's room was at the front of the house, spacious and clean, with windows facing the mountains. Someone had left fresh towels and a pitcher of water on the washstand. "And now," Hope asked gently, "better but not whole. He still drinks but not as much, still blames himself for not saving them. Works too much, sleeps too little, pushes away anyone who tries to help." Santos met her eyes directly. Perhaps having a healer in the house will remind him that sometimes people can be saved. Hope unpacked, slowly processing this information. She'd accepted a position providing medical care, but apparently she'd also walked into a house haunted by loss. No wonder Dr. Whitmore had seemed desperate when he offered her work. Dinner was served in the kitchen, informal but hearty. Beef stew with fresh bread, green beans from the garden apple pie that Santos's wife Maria had sent from their small cabin nearby. The doctor asked polite questions about her journey, her previous work, her plans for organizing medical care. Professional conversation, nothing personal. But Hope caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. And she caught the way his hands shook slightly when he reached for his coffee cup. The careful way he measured his movements. The discipline of a man fighting an ongoing battle with bottles. "I'll need to visit the neighboring families," Hope said over coffee. "Meet the children, understand what medical issues are common, assess what supplies we need. Santos can take you around tomorrow, introduce you properly." "Thank you." Hope hesitated, then forged ahead. "Dr. Whitmore, may I ask what made you decide to hire a nurse?" Something shifted in his expression. Walls slamming down like shutters in a storm. "Practical decision. Too many accidents, too many close calls with no proper medical care. People deserve better." "There's more to it than that." His jaw tightened. "Roberto was sick the night of the fire. Fever, difficulty breathing. If I'd had help, if there'd been someone else to watch him while I fought the flames." He stopped, shook his head. Every child around here should have access to proper medical care. Every family should have someone they can turn to in crisis. You were trying to save them yourself. I failed them both. Carmen died of smoke inhalation. His voice broke slightly. Roberto died because I chose to save property instead of people. By the time I got him out of the house, it was too late. Hope's throat tightened. This wasn't just about providing medical care for the community. This was about a man trying to atone for perceived failures, honoring his dead by protecting others. I'll do everything I can to help, she said quietly. Every family, every child who needs care. Dr. Whitmore nodded once, sharp and final. I'll say goodnight then. Breakfast is at dawn. Santos will show you the medical facility tomorrow before you start visiting families. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Hope watched him go, noting the stiff set of his shoulders, the way he climbed the stairs with measured precision of a man working hard to appear sober. Later, lying in her comfortable bed and listening to the ranch settle around her, Hope reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. This morning, she'd been a failed mail-order bride. Tonight, she was a nurse in a house shadowed by guilt, employed by a man who built walls around his heart like fortress ramparts. But somehow, despite the sadness hanging over Ironwood Ranch like morning mist, Hope felt more purposeful than she had in years. Here was work that mattered, purpose beyond mere survival. And maybe if she was careful and patient, she could help heal some of the wounds that kept Dr. Nathaniel Whitmore trapped in his pain. Through the thin walls, she heard restless footsteps in the hallway. Slow, measured stopping outside what must be another room. The soft click of a door opening. Then silence. Hope closed her eyes and said a prayer for the man sitting alone in his dead family's room, holding vigil over dreams that would never wake. Tomorrow she would begin healing the people of Copper Ridge. Tonight she would dream of little boys who loved medicine and fathers who blamed themselves for tragedies beyond their control. Some wounds cut so deep they become part of a person's bones. But new healing could grow around old scars if hearts were brave enough to let it happen. Outside her window, the Montana wind sang through the grass, carrying promises as vast as the sky overhead. 3 weeks into her duties, Hope had established routines that felt as natural as breathing. Mornings in the medical facility treating ranch hands' injuries and illnesses. Afternoons visiting homesteads carrying healing and hope to families scattered across the valley. Evenings preparing medications while Dr. Whitmore worked on ranch accounts, both of them orbiting each other with careful politeness. But beneath the surface, tensions built like storm clouds on the horizon. Hope had quickly realized that Dr. Nathaniel Whitmore was fighting two battles, one against the guilt, eating his soul, another against the whiskey that promised temporary escape from pain. She'd found empty bottles hidden in his studies, seen him struggle with the tremors that came when he tried to go too long without drinking. But she'd also seen his brilliance when medical emergencies arose, the way his hands steadied and his mind sharpened when people's lives hung in the balance. He cannot continue like this, Santos confided one evening as they watched the doctor disappear into the barn for the third time that night. A man needs more than work and whiskey to survive. Senor Nathaniel, he punishes himself for things God never meant him to carry alone. What can we do? You could talk to him. You are the only one he listens to anymore. The only one who understands medicine like he does. Hope wasn't sure about that, but she found him in the medical facility that night. The door stood slightly open, lamplight spilling into the darkness. Through the gap, she could see him hunched over a medical journal, a glass of amber liquid at his elbow. Dr. Whitmore, come in. His voice was tired, decades older than his years. Hope entered the room for the first time since he'd given her the initial tour. It was a physician's paradise equipped better than most city hospitals. Surgical instruments gleamed in glass cases. Medicines lined shelves in perfect order. Everything spotless and organized, a shrine to the healing arts. But there were also signs of the man's private torment. Empty bottles shoved behind supply cabinets. Blood-stained sheets that spoke of late-night attempts to save lives. And in the corner, a small bed with child-sized restraints, obviously meant for treating injured children. Dr. Whitmore sat at a desk covered with medical texts, the glass at his elbow half empty. He looked up as she approached, no surprise in his expression, despite the late hour. Studying? Hope asked gently. Researching. New treatments for smoke inhalation, burn injuries, respiratory distress in children. He gestured to the journals scattered around him. If I'd known then what I've learned since, you would have saved them. Maybe, or maybe I would have failed them differently. He picked up the glass, stared into the amber depths without drinking. Do you know what the worst part is, Miss Valdez? Hope settled in a chair across from him, careful not to disturb anything. Tell me. The worst part is that I was drunk that night. Not fall down drunk, but drunk enough. My hands were unsteady, my judgment clouded. When I smelled smoke, my first thought wasn't to save my family. It was to sober up enough to function. And that delay cost them their lives. By the time I made it to Roberto's room, the flames were too high. By the time I got Carmen out, she'd already inhaled too much smoke. His laugh was bitter as winter wind. The great Dr. Whitmore, who'd treated battlefield injuries and plague outbreaks, couldn't save his own wife and child because he was too drunk to think clearly. Hope's heart clenched. She'd seen grief before, but this felt different. Raw still despite months passing. Have you spoken to anyone about this? A minister, another doctor, anyone? What would be the point? Nothing can bring them back. Nothing can change what I did. He finally lifted the glass, then set it down untasted. But maybe I can keep it from happening to other families. Maybe some good can come from their deaths if I stay sober enough to help when people need healing. Is that what you're doing, Chow? Staying sober? Dr. Whitmore met her eyes directly. Trying to. Some days are better than others. Some nights, he gestured to the glass. Some nights, the guilt is louder than the logic. Hope leaned forward, choosing her words carefully. In Santa Fe, I treated many men who drank to forget pain. Soldiers who'd seen too much death, fathers who'd lost children to diseased husbands, who'd buried wives. Do you know what I learned? What? Whiskey doesn't make the pain go away. It just makes it louder when you finally have to face it. And you think I should face it. I think you're already facing it. Every day, every patient you save, every time you choose healing over drinking. Hope touched the edge of his desk, not quite touching his hand, but close enough to offer comfort. But I also think you're carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you. Doesn't it? His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I was their protector. I was supposed to keep them safe. You were their husband and father, not God. You couldn't have known about the fire. You couldn't have prevented what happened. But I could have been more prepared, clear-headed, ready to act instead of struggling to focus. Hope was quiet for a long moment, listening to wind whistle through the eaves, watching lamplight flicker across his tortured features. Finally, she spoke. May I tell you something about the night Miguel and Diego died? Dr. Whitmore nodded, suddenly alert. I was in town that night. There'd been a difficult birth, and I stayed late to make sure mother and baby were stable. If I'd been home, I could have treated their wounds immediately. I could have stopped the bleeding, maybe saved them both. Her voice grew rough with old pain. Instead, I came home to find them already gone, already cold. You blame yourself. Every day for 2 years. If only I'd gone home earlier. If only I'd been there when they needed me. If only I'd been a better wife, a more careful mother. She met his eyes directly. But blame and responsibility are different things, Doctor. I was responsible for loving them, not for preventing random acts of violence. And you think my situation is the same? I think you've been carrying guilt that belongs to circumstances, not choices. The fire wasn't your fault. Your family's death wasn't punishment for drinking. Sometimes terrible things happen to good people, and no amount of guilt or whiskey can change that. Dr. Whitmore was quiet for so long, Hope wondered if she'd pushed too hard. Then he reached for the glass, held it up to the light, and slowly poured the contents onto the floor. Will you help me? He asked quietly. Help you what? Stay sober. Stay focused on healing instead of hiding. He looked around the medical facility at all the instruments and medicines and possibilities for saving lives. I want to be the doctor I was before grief made me weak. I want to honor Carmen and Roberto by being worthy of the life they lost. What would you need from me? Partnership, medical collaboration, someone who understands healing and can help me remember why it matters. His hands were steadier now, purpose replacing desperation. And maybe friendship. I've been alone so long I'd forgotten what human connection feels like. Hope's heart skipped a beat at the word friendship, but she kept her voice steady. I'd be honored to work with you, Dr. Whitmore. Nathaniel, call me Nathaniel. Nathaniel. The name felt right on her tongue, intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. And you should call me Hope. Hope. He smiled for the first time since she'd known him, and the transformation was stunning. Years fell away from his face, revealing the brilliant, passionate man he'd been before grief carved him hollow. It suits you. They spent the next hour planning collaborative medical care for the community. Nathaniel would handle surgery and complex diagnoses. Hope would manage routine care, births, and family medicine. Together, they would train Santos and selected ranch hands in basic medical techniques, creating a network of healing that could respond quickly to emergencies. There's something else, Nathaniel said as they prepared to leave. Something I should tell you before you commit to working with me long term. What? His expression grew troubled. My brother Vincent is coming for a visit next month. He doesn't approve of my lifestyle choices. Drinking, isolation, what he calls wallowing in self-pity. He's been pressuring me to sell the ranch, move to Denver, start over somewhere else. And you don't want to leave? This is where Carmen and Roberto lived and died. This is where their memories are strongest. This is where I can do the most good. Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but Vincent has legal training and he's concerned about my mental state. If he thinks I'm unfit to manage my affairs, he could have you declared incompetent. Exactly. Having a professional nurse working with me, providing medical care to the community, would help demonstrate that I'm functional and contributing to society. Hope studied his face, looking for hidden motivations. Is that why you hired me, to help prove your competence to your brother? It started that way, Nathaniel admitted, but it's become something more. You've given me hope that healing is possible, that I can be more than my worst mistakes. And if your brother still objects, then I'll fight him, but I'd rather do it with a partner than alone. Hope thought about children she'd begun treating, families who depended on the medical care she provided. About Nathaniel himself, wounded but decent, carrying burdens that would break lesser men. About the possibility of building something meaningful from the ruins of their shared losses. I'll stand with you, she said simply. Even if it means conflict, Vincent can be persuasive, and he has resources I lack. Then we'll be more persuasive, and we'll have something he doesn't. What's that? The truth, and a community that values what we're doing. They shook hands on it, but when their skin touched, Hope felt electricity race up her arm. Nathaniel must have felt it too, because he held her hand a moment longer than necessary, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. Thank you, he said softly, for seeing past the broken parts to whatever might still be worth saving. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, Nathaniel. Even people who've forgotten how to forgive themselves. 2 weeks later, Hope was returning from a difficult birth at the Henderson farm when she spotted riders approaching Ironwood Ranch. Even from a distance, their intent seemed official. Legal maybe, or governmental. The kind of men who brought complications wherever they went. She urged her horse faster, reaching the ranch yard just as the visitors dismounted. The leader was a well-dressed man in his 40s, handsome in a cold way. His companions looked like hired professionals, not gunmen, but men accustomed to enforcing authority through different means. Vincent, Nathaniel said, emerging from the main house. His voice was carefully controlled, but Hope could see tension in every line of his body. Hello, brother. Vincent Whitmore's smile was sharp as a blade. You're looking better than I expected. Rural life must agree with you. It suits me fine, same as always. Does it? I've heard interesting reports about your activities, hiring nurses, treating patients, playing doctor again. Vincent's gaze swept the ranch buildings, clearly assessing their value. Some might call that progress. Others might wonder if you're overcompensating it for past failures. Hope dismounted quietly, staying close enough to hear but not intruding on family business. Something about Vincent made her skin crawl, though she couldn't put her finger on why. Who I hire and what medical care I provide is my business, Nathaniel replied. Is it, as your older brother and the executor of our parents' will, I have legitimate concerns about your judgment. Your drinking, your isolation, your apparent inability to move past Carmen and Roberto's deaths. Vincent stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. The ranch is a valuable property, Nathaniel. Too valuable to waste on a man who can't manage his own demons. I'm managing just fine. Are you? Then why do you need a live-in nurse? Why are you playing doctor instead of being one properly? Why haven't you dealt with the legal complications surrounding the fire? Hope's blood chilled. Legal complications? Vincent turned toward her, his smile widening unpleasantly. And you must be the famous Miss Valdez. I've heard so much about your services. The way he said services made it sound sordid and improper. Hope felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice level. I provide medical care to ranch families in surrounding communities. I'm sure you do. Tell me, Miss Valdez, has my brother shared with you the full details of his family's tragic death? Vincent, Nathaniel's voice carried warning. Oh, but she should know, shouldn't she? If she's going to try working so closely with you, providing such intimate care, she should understand exactly what kind of man she's supporting. What are you implying? Hope demanded. Vincent pulled a leather folder from his coat, extracted several official-looking documents. I'm implying nothing. I'm stating facts. The fire that killed Carmen and Roberto Whitmore is still under investigation by territorial authorities. There are questions about the cause, the response time, the medical treatment provided. Nathaniel went pale. That investigation was closed months ago. Closed but not resolved. There are inconsistencies in witness statements, questions about whether proper medical procedures were followed, concerns about the level of impairment of the primary treating physician. Vincent's smile was cold as winter ice. Dr. Nathaniel Whitmore was drunk the night his family died. Drunk and therefore potentially negligent in his response to the emergency. That's enough, Hope said sharply. Is it Miss Valdez? Did you know that my brother could face charges of medical malpractice? That there's evidence suggesting his impaired state directly contributed to his family's death? That he could lose not only his medical license, but potentially face criminal prosecution? The ranch yard had gone deadly quiet. Santos and several hands had emerged from buildings drawn by raised voices. Hope could see shock and confusion on their faces as they processed Vincent's accusations. These are old lies, Nathaniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. Are they? I have testimony from the territorial fire marshal, questioning the timeline of events. Medical records showing delays in treatment that might have been prevented by a sober physician. Witness statements about your condition that night. Vincent stepped closer to Hope. Miss Valdez, you seem like an intelligent woman. Do you really want to tie your professional reputation to a man who might be charged with criminal negligence? Hope looked at Nathaniel, saw devastation in his eyes. Whatever Vincent was claiming, true or false, it was hitting its mark. The careful progress Nathaniel had made towards sobriety and self-forgiveness was crumbling under this new assault. What do you want, Vincent? She asked quietly. I want what's best for my brother. I want him to sign over ranch management, to me enter a treatment facility in Denver, and get the help he clearly needs. I want these legal complications resolved before they destroy what's left of the Whitmore name. And if he refuses, Vincent's smile was sharp enough to cut. Then the territorial authorities will receive a full report on Dr. Nathaniel Whitmore's fitness to practice medicine, his mental state, and the circumstances surrounding his family's death. They'll investigate properly this time with all the resources at their disposal. You bastard, Nathaniel whispered. I'm your brother who's trying to save you from yourself. Sign over ranch management, Nathaniel. Get treatment. Let me handle the legal mess you've created. It's your only hope of avoiding criminal charges. Hope watched Nathaniel struggle with the decision, saw him weighing his guilt against his love for the ranch, his fear of losing everything against his terror of facing legal consequences. The man who'd been growing stronger, more confident, more hopeful, was disappearing before her eyes. I need time to think, Nathaniel said finally. You have 24 hours. After that, I file reports with territorial authorities and begin proceedings to have you declared mentally incompetent. Vincent folded the documents carefully. Miss Valdez, you seem like a practical woman. Perhaps you could help my brother see reason. He mounted his horse, his companions following suit. One day, Nathaniel, don't make this harder than it has to be. They rode away, leaving Hope and Nathaniel standing in the ranch yard, surrounded by worried faces and whispered concerns. The careful peace they'd built over the past weeks lay in ruins around them. Nathaniel, Hope said gently, don't. He turned away, shoulders rigid with pain. Just don't. Vincent's right. I am broken, I am dangerous, and you shouldn't tie your reputation to mine. That's fear talking, not fact. Is it? Maybe the reason I can't remember that night clearly is because I was too drunk to form proper memories. Maybe I did make mistakes that cost them their lives. Maybe Vincent is doing everyone a favor by forcing me to face consequences. Hope watched him walk toward the house, saw him disappear into his study where whiskey waited to drown the pain. Around them, ranch hands dispersed quietly, but she could see doubt in their faces. Vincent's poison was already spreading. That night, Hope sat alone in her room, staring out at stars scattered like diamonds across the Montana sky. Tomorrow, Nathaniel would have to choose between his ranch and his freedom, between fighting his brother's accusations and accepting defeat. And Hope would have to decide whether to stand with a man who was losing faith in himself or protect her own future by stepping away from a situation spiraling toward disaster. Through the walls, she heard the soft clink of glass on glass from Nathaniel's study, the sound of a man trying to drown truth in whiskey, whether that truth was guilt or innocence. Sometimes healing required more than medicine. Sometimes it required faith in people who'd forgotten how to have faith in themselves. Hope closed her eyes and made her choice, praying she was strong enough to help Nathaniel fight the battles ahead. Tomorrow would bring whatever consequences it brought. Tonight she would prepare for the hardest healing work of her life, saving a man's soul from the poison of despair. Hope woke to the sound of breaking glass from downstairs. Gray dawn light filtered through her windows as she threw on a robe and hurried toward the commotion. In the kitchen, she found Nathaniel picking up shards of a shattered whiskey bottle, his hands shaking badly. "I'm sorry, but he said without looking up. "I was trying to pour it out, but my hands." He held up trembling fingers. "I can't even dispose of temptation properly." Hope knelt beside him, gently taking the glass fragments from his bleeding palms. "Let me see these cuts. They're nothing. They're something to me." She led him to a chair, fetched her medical bag, and began cleaning the wounds with steady hands. "How long since your last drink?" 18 hours, maybe 20. Time blurs when you're fighting not to reach for a bottle every 5 minutes. The shaking will get worse before it gets better. Nausea, sweating, possibly hallucinations. You should be in a medical facility for withdrawal. Can't leave. Vincent's deadline is this afternoon, and I need to be clear-headed when I face him. Nathaniel watched her bandage his cuts with professional efficiency. "Why are you still here, Hope?" "Where else would I be?" "Packing, getting as far away from this mess as possible, protecting your reputation from whatever scandal is about to destroy mine." Hope finished the bandages and sat back, studying his haggard face. "Is that what you want me to do?" "I want you to be practical. Vincent has money connections, legal resources I can't match. If he's determined to destroy me, he'll probably succeed. And you're just gonna let him? What choice do I have? Fight accusations that might be true, risk criminal charges for crimes I might actually have committed." Nathaniel's laugh was hollow as winter wind. "Maybe it's time to pay for my failures properly." Hope stood abruptly, pacing to the kitchen window where morning light revealed ranch hands going about their daily work. "Tell me about that night, Nathaniel. Not what you think happened, not what Vincent claims happened. What you actually remember." "I've told you, I was drinking, I smelled smoke, I tried to save them but failed." "Details. Start from dinner and tell me everything, no matter how small." Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, hands pressed to his temples. "Carmen made stew. Roberto helped her in the kitchen, getting flour everywhere. He was excited because I'd promised to teach him about setting broken bones the next day." "What time did you eat?" 6 o'clock, maybe 6:30. We ate together, talked about ranch business, Roberto's lessons, Carmen's garden plans. His voice grew softer with memory. "It was a good evening. Happy. Normal." "When did you start drinking?" "After Roberto went to bed. 8 o'clock, 8:30. Carmen was sewing by the fireplace. I had paperwork in my study, contracts to review." He paused. "I poured one drink, maybe two. Not unusual, not excessive." "How much total?" "Also, 3 glasses spread over 2 hours. Enough to relax, not enough to impair judgment significantly." Hope turned from the window. "That's not drunk, Nathaniel. That's moderate social drinking." But my hands were shaking when I tried to treat them. My thoughts were confused. Or maybe your hands were shaking from terror and your thoughts were confined from seeing your family dying. Maybe what you remember as drunkenness was actually shock and trauma. Vincent has witnesses. Vincent has people who will say whatever he pays them to say. But I have something else. Hope moved to the kitchen table, pulled out a chair across from him. I've been asking questions around town. Quiet questions, careful questions. Nathaniel looked up sharply. What kind of questions? About that night, about the fire marshal's investigation, about the medical response. Hope leaned forward intently. Nathaniel, the fire started in the barn, not the house. It spread to the house because of high winds, but the initial fire was in the barn. Why would you be responsible for a fire that started in the barn? I, I don't know. I assumed it started in the house, maybe from the fireplace. It didn't. And there's more. Dr. Patterson from town was called to assist that night. He's the one who examined Carmen and Roberto, who made official pronouncements about their deaths. Patterson never mentioned any concerns about my treatment, because there weren't any. I spoke with him yesterday. He said your medical response was textbook perfect, your surgical technique flawless despite the circumstances. He said you saved Roberto's life initially. The boy lived for 3 hours after the fire conscious and talking before his respiratory system finally failed. Nathaniel went very still. Roberto was alive for 3 hours. Dr. Patterson said you performed emergency respiratory support, cleared his airways, treated burns with techniques that wouldn't be developed for another decade. He called it the most impressive battlefield medicine he'd ever witnessed. But he died anyway. He died because his lungs were too damaged to sustain life long term, not because of anything you did or failed to do. Hope reached across the table, covered his shaking hands with hers. Nathaniel, you weren't drunk that night. You were brilliant. You fought for their lives with everything you had, and you gave Roberto 3 more hours with his mother before they both died peacefully. Then why don't I remember it clearly? Because trauma affects memory formation. Because grief makes us question everything we think we know. Because guilt can convince us we're responsible for things completely beyond our control. They sat in silence while Nathaniel processed this information. Finally, he spoke, voice rough with unshed tears. If that's true, then Vincent's accusations are lies, malicious, calculated lies designed to manipulate you into giving up everything you have worked for. But why? Why would he go to such lengths? Before Hope could answer, hoofbeats thundered into the ranch yard. Through the window, they could see Vincent arriving with a larger group this time. Not just legal documents and intimidation. These men looked like enforcers. Because he's not just interested in your medical reputation, Hope said quietly. He's interested in your land. They went outside to meet Vincent. Nathaniel, still unsteady from withdrawal, but standing straighter than he had in hours. Hope positioned herself beside him, making it clear she wasn't abandoning him to face this alone. Nathaniel, Vincent called as he dismounted. I hope you've used your time wisely. Have you reached a decision about ranch management? I have. Nathaniel's voice was stronger than Hope had heard it in days. I'm keeping my ranch, continuing my medical practice, and suggesting you find more productive ways to spend your time. Vincent's smile turned dangerous. I see Miss Valdez has been filling your head with romantic notions about standing up to family authority. How unfortunate. Miss Valdez helped me remember some important facts about the night of the fire. Facts that contradict your accusations. Such as the fire starting in the barn, not the house. Such as my medical response being exemplary according to the attending physician. Such as Roberto surviving 3 hours after rescue because of treatments I provided. Vincent's expression didn't change, but Hope caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Not surprise, calculation. As if he'd expected this development and prepared for it. Interesting theory, Vincent said smoothly. Unfortunately, I have new information that puts a different light on events. He pulled out another set of documents, these ones bearing official, territorial seals. A fuller investigation has revealed additional facts about that tragic night. Facts about why the fire started and who was responsible. What do you mean? Nathaniel demanded. I mean, the fire wasn't accidental, brother dear. Someone left a lamp burning in the barn despite knowing it was dangerous. Someone whose judgment was impaired by alcohol, who made a careless mistake that cost 2 innocent lives. Hope felt ice form in her stomach. You're saying Nathaniel caused the fire? I'm saying the evidence suggests criminal negligence in fire safety protocols compounded by intoxication and resulting in 2 deaths. The territorial marshal has agreed to reopen the investigation based on new witness testimony. Vincent handed Nathaniel the documents. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to resolve this matter privately. Sign over ranch management, enter treatment, and let the investigation remain closed. Continue fighting and face potential manslaughter charges. Nathaniel scanned the papers, his face growing paler with each page. These witness statements, I've never seen half these people in my life. Nevertheless, they've sworn under oath to specific observations about your behavior that night. Your level of intoxication, your careless handling of fire, your delayed response to the emergency. Lies. Hope snatched the papers, reading it quickly. Every word of this is fabricated. Prove it, Vincent said calmly. In court, under oath, with your brother's freedom and reputation at stake. Take that risk if you want, but understand the consequences. Hope looked at the signatures on the witness statements, noting names she recognized from town. People Vincent could have paid or threatened into lying. People whose testimony would be believed because they had no obvious reason to lie about a tragic accident. There's something else, Vincent continued. Something you should both understand before making your final decision. What? Nathaniel asked, though he looked like he dreaded the answer. Miss Valdez's background isn't quite as clean as she's presented. Her husband and child didn't die in an Apache raid as she's claimed. They died in a bar fight that started when Miguel Valdez accused a white man of cheating at cards. The man who killed them was acquitted on grounds of self-defense. Hope's blood turned to ice. How did you? I make it my business to investigate people who might influence my brother's decisions. Your husband wasn't a respected doctor, Miss Valdez. He was a drunk and a gambler who got his family killed through poor judgment. Rather like my brother, wouldn't you say? Stop. Nathaniel stepped forward, anger overriding withdrawal symptoms. Whatever you think you know about Hope's past doesn't change anything about the present. Doesn't it? She's been lying to you, Nathaniel, about her background, her qualifications, probably about her motives for staying here. How can you trust someone who's built your relationship on deception? Hope wanted to defend herself, to explain the complexities of what had really happened that night in Santa Fe. But Vincent's version contained enough truth to make her sound guilty of lying by omission. 24 hours is up, brother, Vincent said, remounting his horse. I'll be back tomorrow morning with territorial authorities. Have your decision ready or face the consequences of your choices. He rode away with his entourage, leaving Hope and Nathaniel standing in the dust of shattered trust and impossible choices. Is it true? Nathaniel asked quietly. About your husband and son? Hope closed her eyes, feeling the weight of secrets she'd carried for 2 years. Partly, Miguel did die in a bar fight, but not because he was cheating or drinking excessively. He was defending another Mexican family from men who were threatening them. And Diego was caught in the crossfire when the fight escalated. Miguel tried to shield him, but she shrugged helplessly. The men who killed them were acquitted because no jury would convict white men for killing Mexicans in self-defense. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Because I knew how it would sound. Because I was ashamed of not being able to protect them. Because I didn't want you to see me as another person damaged by violence and poor choices. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation alongside everything else Vincent had thrown at them. Finally, he spoke. Hope, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. What? Do you believe I caused that fire? Do you think I was drunk enough to make the kind of mistake Vincent claims? Hope looked at him directly. This man who'd shown her kindness when she needed it most, who'd been fighting his own demons while trying to heal others, who'd been carrying guilt that wasn't his to bear. No, she said firmly. I believe you're a good man who's been manipulated by someone who wants what you have. I believe Vincent's accusations are lies designed to steal your ranch and destroy your spirit. Even knowing I might be wrong, even knowing that standing with me could destroy your reputation and your future. Even then, Nathaniel studied her face, looking for doubt or hesitation. Finding none, he straightened his shoulders and made his decision. Then we fight. Together, if you are willing. I'm willing, but how? Vincent has money connections, false witnesses. What do we have? We have the truth, and we have something Vincent doesn't expect. What's that? Nathaniel's smile was grim but determined. We have each other, and sometimes that's enough to move mountains. That afternoon, Hope and Nathaniel rode into Copper Ridge together, not to surrender or negotiate, but to investigate. If Vincent had manufactured evidence and witnesses, there would be traces of his manipulation. Money changing hands, threats made people who knew more than they were saying. Their first stop was Dr. Patterson's office. The elderly physician welcomed them warmly, expressing concern about rumors circulating in town. Nathaniel, I need you to know that everything I told Miss Valdez about that night was absolute truth. Your medical response was exemplary, your treatments appropriate, your judgment sound. Then why are people saying otherwise? Because someone's been spreading money around town asking leading questions, encouraging certain interpretations of events. Dr. Patterson's expression hardened. Your brother visited me 3 days ago, offering payment for testimony about your condition that night. What did you tell him? That he could take his money and use it for kindling. That I wouldn't lie about a colleague's professional competence for any amount. The older doctor leaned forward intently. But not everyone has my ethical standards, Nathaniel. Vincent found people willing to say whatever he wanted to hear. And they spent hours talking to townspeople, piecing together Vincent's campaign of manipulation. The picture that emerged was damning. Vincent had arrived in Copper Ridge weeks ago, systematically approaching people with connections to the fire, offering money for testimony that supported his version of events. Why, Hope asked as they prepared to return to the ranch. Why go to such lengths to destroy you? Because Ironwood Ranch sits on some of the richest grazing land in Montana, Nathaniel replied. Because Vincent's always been jealous of what I built from nothing while he inherited money and squandered it on bad investments. And because removing you clears his path to inheriting everything when our parents die, a new voice added. They turned to see a stranger approaching, a middle-aged man in a travel-dusty suit carrying a leather satchel that marked him as a professional of some kind. Who are you? Nathaniel asked. James Crawford, attorney from Denver. I represent your parents' interests, and I've been investigating some irregularities in Vincent's handling of family business. Hope felt a surge of hope. What kind of irregularities? The kind that suggests Vincent has been manipulating family finances for years, possibly preparing to contest your parents' will when the time comes. Crawford pulled out documents from his satchel. Your parents sent me to investigate when they received disturbing reports about your mental state and Vincent's claims about ranch management. My parents know about Vincent's accusations. They know Vincent's been spreading lies about you while positioning himself to inherit family assets. They're not pleased. Crawford smiled grimly. In fact, they've asked me to deliver a message, fight back and fight hard. They won't let Vincent destroy everything you've built through dishonesty and manipulation. That evening, Hope found Nathaniel in his study, but for the first time since she'd known him, there was no whiskey on the desk. Instead, he was reviewing Crawford's documents and preparing legal responses to Vincent's accusations. How are you feeling? She asked. Terrible, shaky, nauseous, like my skin's trying to crawl off my body. He looked up with a wry smile. But clearer than I've felt in 2 years. The withdrawal will pass. Will it, or will I always be one crisis away from reaching for a bottle? Hope moved closer, studying his face in the lamplight. The tremor was still there, but his eyes were sharper, more focused than she'd seen them. That depends on whether you're strong enough to fight for what matters most. And what's that? The work we're doing, the people we're helping, the life we're building. She paused, heart racing. The possibility of something more between us than just professional partnership. Nathaniel went very still. Hope you don't know what you're saying. I'm broken. I'm an alcoholic. I might be facing criminal charges. You're healing. You're fighting addiction. And you're innocent of every charge Vincent's bringing against you. She moved closer, still close enough to see gold flecks in his gray eyes. More than that, you're brave enough to face your demons instead of running from them. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that two people who've lost everything might be able to build something new together. I'm suggesting that partnership could become something deeper if we're both willing to take that risk. Hope. His voice was rough with emotion. If I let myself care about you, if I let you care about me and something happens, then we'll face it together. But Nathaniel hiding from love doesn't protect anyone. It just guarantees we'll be alone when trouble comes. They were interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats in the ranch yard. Through the window, they could see torches moving in the darkness. Too many riders moving too fast, arriving with dangerous intent. Vincent, Nathaniel said grimly. They hurried outside to find Vincent and nearly a dozen men surrounding the main house. But these weren't legal officials or witnesses. These were hard-faced men with guns, the kind hired for jobs that couldn't be done through law books and court proceedings. "Hello, brother," Vincent called from horseback. "I thought you might benefit from a more direct conversation about your future." "What do you want, Vincent?" "I want you to understand that I'm done playing games. Sign over the ranch tonight or face consequences that go beyond legal troubles." Nathaniel stepped forward, Hope beside him. Around them, ranch hands emerged from the bunkhouse and outbuildings alerted by the commotion. Santos appeared with a rifle, his weathered face grim with determination. "You're threatening me on my own land. I'm offering you one final opportunity to salvage something from this mess. Sign the papers, take treatment money, and live quietly somewhere else. Refuse and discover what happens to people who stand in my way." And Hope, Vincent's smile turned cruel. "Miss Valdez can leave tonight with her reputation intact, or she can stay and share whatever fate you choose for yourself." Hope felt fear creep up to her spine, but she forced herself to stand straight. "I'm staying." "How romantic. How foolish." Vincent gestured to his men, who began dismounting with obvious hostile intent. "You have 5 minutes to reconsider." What happened next moved too fast for conscious thought. One of Vincent's men reached for his gun, apparently deciding negotiation was taking too long. Santos raised his rifle in response. Other ranch hands scattered for cover, hands moving to weapons of their own. But before anyone could fire a shot, new voices cut through the tension. "Vincent Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, and extortion." Territorial Marshal Webb rode into the ranch yard with a full posse, badges gleaming in torchlight. Vincent's hired guns found themselves suddenly outnumbered by legitimate law enforcement. "This is a misunderstanding," Vincent said quickly. "I'm here on family business." "You're here committing felonies," Marshal Webb replied. "We have testimony from 6 people you bribed or threatened into lying about your brother. We have evidence of forged documents and manufactured witness statements. We have enough crimes to keep you in territorial prison for the next 20 years. As Vincent was led away in shackles, Hope realized she was shaking. Not from fear, but from relief so intense it left her weak-kneed. "How?" she asked Crawford, who had appeared with the marshal's posse. "Your parents hired private investigators weeks ago," the attorney explained to Nathaniel. "They suspected Vincent was up to something when he started asking questions about the will and your mental state. The investigators uncovered the whole scheme: the bribery, the forged documents, even Vincent's plans to have you declared incompetent so he could control ranch assets. In the fire investigation, closed permanently, the original findings stand: accidental fire, exemplary medical response, no negligence of any kind." Crawford smiled. "Your reputation is not only cleared, Dr. Whitmore, it's enhanced. The Territorial Medical Board wants to commend your emergency treatment techniques." 3 weeks later, Hope stood in the Ironwood Ranch Medical Facility, organizing supplies for the day's patient visits. Outside, she could hear Nathaniel talking with Santos about plans for expanding their medical services to neighboring counties. The tremor in his hands had finally stopped. The haunted look in his eyes had been replaced by something that looked like peace. He'd been sober for 26 days, and each day seemed easier than the last. "Hope," he appeared in the doorway, no longer hesitant about entering the medical space they now shared. "Mrs. Henderson's baby is coming early. Are you ready?" "Always." She gathered her birthing kit, but before they could leave, Nathaniel caught her hand. "Hope, there's something I need to say." "What?" "Vincent was wrong about a lot of things, but he was right about one. I am broken, I am struggling, and I will probably never be completely free from the temptation to drink away my problems." Hope's heart clenched. "Nathaniel, but I'm also healing. I'm learning to live with loss without drowning in it. I'm discovering that some kinds of love are worth the risk of more loss." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I love you, Hope Valdez. Not because you saved my reputation or helped me stay sober, but because you saw something worth saving when I'd given up on myself." "I love you too," she whispered. "All of you." The brilliant parts and the broken parts and everything in between. Then will you marry me? Not for convenience or legal protection, but because I want to build a life with you, because I want to heal the world together, starting with each other. Hope's answer was a kiss that tasted like redemption and felt like coming home. 6 months later, Nathaniel Whitmore and Dr. Hope Valdez Whitmore ran the most respected medical practice in Montana Territory. Their ranch had become a healing center where people came not just for physical treatment, but for hope that broken things could be made whole again. And in Hope's growing belly, new life stirred, proof that from the ashes of loss, love could create miracles beyond imagining. Love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds, to bring hope to the most broken hearts, and to create new beginnings from life's most devastating endings. Hope in Nathaniel's story reminds us that sometimes the people we need most arrive precisely when we think we're beyond saving. Their journey from strangers to partners to soulmates proves that redemption is possible, that addiction can be overcome, and that the strongest love often grows from shared struggles rather than easy circumstances. If this story of second chances and healing love touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional Western romances. Share in the comments below. Have you ever found love when you least expected it? And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest adventures in the Wild West, where broken hearts find healing and wounded souls discover that home isn't a place, it's the person willing to walk through fire with you. Until next time, may your own love story be as enduring as the Montana mountains and as healing as mountain spring water. Vaya con Dios.